I told my boyfriend I felt uncomfortable seeing another woman grind on him at a party. He told me he hates me, slammed the door in my face, locked me out, blocked me everywhere, and said his birthday wish was to never see me again. Things between us have been rocky for a while, constant ups and downs, but lately it's been different. It feels like I can't say anything about how I feel without it turning into a full-blown disaster. Every time I try to express something, even calmly, he reacts like I've committed the worst crime imaginable. It's never just a disagreement. It's him throwing my things out, kicking me out, breaking up with me, blocking me, and then somehow making me feel like I caused it all. The other night was just another reminder of that pattern. I'd had one of the most stressful weeks at work. My bosses were trying to drag me into something shady, basically an illegal investigation, and I was barely holding it together. My friend, who knows a lot about workplace law, called me after work to walk me through everything. She's blunt and doesn't sugarcoat things, so when she told me I should have known my rights better and that I put myself in this situation by being too trusting, I broke down. I was sitting in my car in tears, parked near his place, just trying to breathe and process it all. My phone was on the passenger seat while my friend kept talking. I just stared at the ceiling, zoned out, trying not to cry harder. When I finally hung up, I noticed my phone buzzing. It was a no-caller ID number. I hesitated for a second but picked up, and it was him. His first words were, "Where the hell are you?" Not, "Hey, are you okay?" or even a normal tone, just full of accusation. I explained I was in the parking lot talking to my friend. He immediately shot back, "Nah, how are you gonna ask me to call you and then ignore all my calls?" It took me a second to even process what he meant. Then I checked my call log. He tried calling several times. My phone must have been on silent while it sat in the seat next to me. I tried to explain that, to tell him I wasn't ignoring him, that I hadn't even noticed the calls. He didn't want to hear it. "Why are you lying?" he snapped. I said, "I'm not lying, I promise. I didn't see them." But he just sighed, said, "No, I'm so done with this shit," and hung up. That's it. That's all it takes for him to go from calm to cruel, from "I love you" to "I'm done." And the worst part? I found myself sitting there crying even harder, not because of what my friend said or because of the fight, but because part of me was already thinking about how to apologize just to make it better. I remember running to his place that night, heart pounding so fast I could barely breathe. I didn't even think, I just went. My face was still wet with tears when I opened his door. He didn't even look at me. He was sitting on the couch, eyes locked on the screen, playing his video game like nothing was happening. I stood there for a few seconds, hoping he'd pause, that he'd glance over, that maybe he'd see me and just care. But he didn't. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even acknowledge I was there. I started talking, my voice trembling. I told him I was sorry, that I didn't mean to upset him, that I just wanted to talk things through. I asked him to pause the game just for a minute so we could fix this. But it was like I was invisible. The harder I tried, the quieter he became. My voice broke. I started crying harder, begging him to say something, anything, but he just kept pressing buttons on the controller, stone-faced, like I didn't exist. Eventually, I couldn't take the humiliation anymore. I got up and started walking to the door, tears streaming down my face. That's when he finally reacted. He put his controller down, turned to me and said flatly, "Yeah, get the F out. I'll lock the door behind you too." It was like a punch to the chest. I froze, my hand hovering near the doorknob. I turned back and said I didn't understand what he wanted from me. I told him I was trying to talk to him, to fix things, but he was ignoring me. He just shrugged and said nothing. I told him I'd go home and let him have space, and that's when he snapped again, saying that in our relationship, leaving meant we were breaking up. I told him I'd stay, that I didn't want things to end, but then he started yelling again, saying he wanted me out. I said no. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to fight anymore. He told me I was being hysterical and that it was within his rights to ignore me when I acted that way. Then he just turned back to his game, picked up his headset and started laughing and talking to his friends. So I went to the bathroom. I shut the door, sat on the floor, and just sobbed. I didn't want him to hear me, but my chest hurt so bad that the sound came out anyway. A few minutes later, he walked in, looked down at me and sneered. "Are you serious? You're laying next to shit. Get out of my house." I told him to leave me alone. I said I was at my breaking point, that I didn't even know how to handle the pain anymore. He just rolled his eyes and said, "You're acting crazy." Then he reached for me, trying to pull me up, and I told him not to touch me. He told me to go for a damn walk. I said no. because I knew he'd lock me out if I did. He said, "I only said that earlier when you were leaving. You're acting hysterical right now, so you need to go for a walk and calm down." I finally gave in. I said fine. He told me to take my belongings, and I said no, that I'd be coming back when I was calm, like he said. I left, sat in my car, and cried until I couldn't anymore. Then I FaceTimed him and told him I was calm. I asked if I could come back. He said sure, like nothing had ever happened. When I walked back in, he was gaming again, headset on, laughing with his friends. He glanced at me once and said he ordered food and asked me to grab it when it arrived. I nodded quietly. He looked at me again and said, "If you're going to act like that, you can just leave." I swallowed hard and said I didn't want to talk while he was with his friends. Later that night, after his game ended, I apologized for being emotional. I told him I just wanted peace, that I was sorry for crying so much. He accepted it, and we made up like we always did, like it was all just another episode we'd pretend never happened. The next day, we got into a smaller argument about something stupid. I stopped it before it could escalate. I told him I was waving a white flag, that I didn't want to fight anymore, especially with his birthday coming up. He smiled a little, told me it was fine, that we were good. We both apologized. When we arrived at the ball, it actually felt peaceful for once. We were laughing, taking photos, holding hands, almost like the chaos of the last few weeks had never happened. I remember thinking, maybe this is our turning point. Maybe this is where things finally start to feel good again. But that illusion shattered fast. Later in the night, one of our friends came up to me, looking nervous. She said she'd just seen one of his female coworkers, the one he's always insisting is like a brother to him, grinding on him on the dance floor. She told me she felt uncomfortable watching it because she'd only ever done that with her own husband. I froze. My heart dropped. When he walked over a few minutes later, she immediately told him what she saw, not in a dramatic way, just explaining it had looked inappropriate. He didn't even let her finish before getting defensive. "She's like a brother to us," he said, rolling his eyes. "It's not like that." I tried to stay calm, but it hurt. I told him that if it were me, if some guy was grinding on me, he'd lose his mind. I said I didn't have a problem with his coworker. She'd always been nice to me, but he couldn't act like it was harmless when he'd gotten jealous over me talking to his friends before. The hypocrisy stung. He brushed it off, clearly irritated, so I asked our friend to come with me to the bathroom just to cool off. When we came back, he and his friends were heading upstairs for cigars. The same friend tried to approach him again, to calmly explain that none of this was okay. But instead of listening, he exploded. "F you guys. Ruining my night. I'm tired of this." And he stormed off. I went back to my hotel room, heart pounding, trying not to cry. I vented to my friend, told her I was exhausted from constantly being the problem in his eyes. She apologized over and over, saying she hadn't meant to cause drama and that she'd try to fix it. I didn't even know how to feel, grateful she told me, but crushed by how it all turned out. A little while later, she saw him near the elevator and followed him in. She tried to reason with him, saying he was being unfair, that his reaction was cruel. She waved me over, so I went in too. He wouldn't even look at me at first. When he did, it was with that cold, detached stare I'd come to dread. "You always start things," he said. "You ruin everything." I'm tired of it. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, trying not to cry. Later, our friend and her husband took me to the bar to talk. Her husband said, "It's different for a woman to dance on a guy than for a guy to dance on a woman." We ended up in a debate about double standards and respect. More people joined in, agreeing that his behavior and the way he'd snapped, "F you," were out of line. I guess he overheard because when I went to find him after, he was standing nearby. I walked up and reached for his hand. "Can we just talk about it?" I asked quietly. He looked down at me, pulled his hand away, stood up, and said flatly, "I'm done with you." Then he turned and walked off. I went back to the ballroom with our friend. From across the room, I saw him, laughing, smiling, surrounded by his friends like nothing had happened. I forced myself to focus on anything else, but my chest felt hollow. A little while later, I noticed him at the front desk asking for a new room key. My heart sank. He didn't have ours, I did. He didn't even glance my way. Just grabbed the key, disappeared for a bit, and when I saw him again, he changed out of his suit, laughing and chatting with people like everything was perfectly fine. My friend and her husband took me back to their hotel room after everything that happened. I was still shaking, makeup ruined, trying not to cry again. She offered me a dress and said, Come out with us. Forget him for one night. I told her I wanted to check if he was in our room and try to talk, but she said he wasn't there. I went anyway. The room was empty, his stuff still there, bed untouched, no sign of him. The silence hit me hard. I stood there for a few seconds before breaking down, sobbing into my hands. My friend found me and convinced me to go out with her, saying I needed to stop torturing myself. I agreed, mostly because I couldn't think straight. We got ready and went to a nearby bar, and of course he was there. Laughing, smiling, acting like nothing had happened. I froze, then decided to ignore him just as he was ignoring me. I forced a smile, ordered a drink, danced a little. For a few minutes, I almost felt normal again. Then a guy tried to dance with me. Out of instinct, I walked over to my boyfriend, hugged him to show I wasn't interested. He peeled my arms off him, gave me a cold look, and walked away. I followed, grabbed his hand, begging, "Please don't do this. Let's just drop it." He pulled away, said loudly, "I'm done with her. She's drama. F them." Then he stormed off into the night. My friend and her husband started arguing, and soon she left too, leaving me completely alone. I wandered the streets, still in that stupid dress, crying in public like an idiot. That's when his coworker found me sitting outside a convenience store. He asked if I was okay, and I broke down again, crying harder than I ever have. He handed me a napkin, bought me a drink, and sat beside me quietly while I vented about everything. When I calmed down, he asked what I wanted to do. I said I just wanted to go home. I already knew how this would end. My boyfriend would pack his things in the morning and leave without me. The coworker offered me a ride since we lived nearby, and I agreed, too tired to argue. He said he'd wait in the lobby while I packed. As I was gathering my things, my phone rang. It was my boyfriend's best friend. He said my boyfriend was drunk, outside the hotel, about to get arrested, and asked me to find his ID and car keys. I froze. He left me, ignored me, humiliated me. I said, "Now I'm supposed to save him?" He sighed. "It's not about you two right now," he said. "It's about keeping him out of trouble." I softened up and started searching around the hotel room, still shaking, my head pounding from exhaustion and regret. His best friend had just called, saying my boyfriend was outside the hotel, drunk and about to get arrested, and begged me to find his ID. I looked everywhere, but only found his car keys. I texted back saying they could come get them if they wanted because I was done. I was emotionally drained, humiliated, and tired of trying to fix something that only ever broke me more. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. One of his coworkers stood there, looking genuinely sorry. He asked if he could come in, and when he did, he spoke gently, said he understood how I felt, that the night had gotten way out of hand, and that both of us were drunk and emotional. It was the first time all night someone had spoken to me calmly. I told him how hurt I was. That all I did was express how uncomfortable I felt about another woman grinding on my boyfriend, and somehow that turned into him yelling, storming off, and ignoring me like I was nothing. The coworker nodded and said he understood that it wasn't okay for him to treat me like that. He suggested I stay in one of their rooms for the night, so I could rest without dealing with him. Then another coworker, the one who had offered to drive me home, showed up. The three of us agreed he'd take me home so my boyfriend could stay and sleep it off. The car ride home was silent. I stared out the window, numb, trying to piece together how the night had collapsed like that. By the time I got home, I was hollow. I fell into bed and cried until I couldn't anymore. The next morning was his birthday. Despite everything, I texted him, "Happy birthday." No long message, no argument, just kindness. He didn't reply. His friends and I tried calling him all day, no answer. I started to panic, so I asked one of them to check his place. He said the car was there, so I tried to relax, but I couldn't. By 7 p.m., I drove over. One of his friends was outside his house too, trying to wish him happy birthday. The door was locked, lights off. After a few attempts, his friend gave up and left, but I stayed. I stood there knocking, calling his name, ringing the doorbell. Eventually, I heard movement and the door cracked open. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Cold. Empty. "No," he said flatly. "Leave." I blinked, my voice shaking. "Please, can we just talk?" He stared for a second before snapping. "No. I hate you. I hate you." My heart dropped. "I don't hate you," I whispered. "I don't care," he said. "I hate you. Go away." "It's your birthday," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, let me in." He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Okay. My birthday wish is to never see or speak to you again." I hate you. Now go. Then he slammed the door and locked it. I stood there frozen. I knocked again, softly, then harder, but there was nothing. Eventually, I walked back to my car, sat there for a while, and broke down. I drove home crying the entire way, my chest aching like I was being crushed. When I got home, I realized he had blocked me on everything, my phone, social media, everything. It was like I didn't exist. Now it's the next day, and I can't stop replaying everything. I keep thinking I should have just stayed quiet, that maybe if I hadn't said anything, we'd still be okay. I know he overreacted. I know it wasn't right. But I can't stop blaming myself. I ruined his birthday. I ruined everything. I just wish he'd talk to me again.